I am going to begin. It's 4 o'clock. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this month's episode of Uncensored and In Charge. I'm Erin Childs, and I am really happy to be here today. We are going to be discussing a really interesting and important piece of a catering business that I think isn't always talked about and addressed often, and it is finding the cracks or the weak spots in your catering organization. And I am going to start it with something that somebody had said to me that it seems kind of negative. And so I want to really just touch on this before I go deep into it about this isn't supposed to be negative. Finding weaknesses within your program is a really positive and good area for you to find growth opportunities for team members and or yourself if you're the one responsible for the catering. It's also an unbelievable opportunity to coach, learn from past mistakes so that we can implement better ideas and solutions so that they don't repeat themselves in the future. And of course, coach and train our team members, which is always something that you will hear, I think, anybody in the catering world talk about, and that's teach, coach, train. Okay, so I just want to start with that really quickly because weak does identify as, okay, well, what aren't we doing? But what aren't we doing? We're turning it into a positive so that we can make sure we are going to do it or fix the little areas of weakness because, you know, a very good old boss of mine always would analyze things to all of us rowing in a boat together in one direction. And I often say this to people who I am coaching: if we can get everyone working in the right direction and paddling at the exact same moment, then we can really be successful and take off. So I just wanted to start with that because none of this is about is to be really negative and have you go find the problems, but there are probably weak spaces in your catering programs. And so we're going to identify those weak spots, or I'm hopeful that I can help you identify those weak spots in your catering program and really allow for you to reflect on it and then do something about it. Because we all know that catering is a high margin yet high risk business for us. So we're just going to talk about the common weak spots and I'll begin. So where weakness will often hide is in my opinion, top 3 areas: operations and execution, in sales and growth pipelines for you, and technology and tools. Okay, those are the top 3 that I think are often the issue areas or the weak areas where there can be weakness. Okay, then we'll go down with training and people, packaging, menus, innovation, that kind of stuff. That'll be some other weak spot categories for us. But I'm going to start with kind of going through these one by one. So operations and execution, the operational gaps. Okay, so if we have inconsistent execution on catering orders, most likely people are going to start to lose trust for your business, okay, or for your catering operation. And one of the most important values that I find in any work that I will ever do is whether or not people trust you or not. It's a number 1 for me. So what to look for? What are the signs? Okay, operational gap weaknesses. Ready? Late orders. We've all had those. Wrong orders. We've all had those. Any missing items from orders. Those are 3 gigantic, if you have those in a week, there's something happening there. So it's a good telltale sign for you to dive in and try to figure out the problem. Okay. If there is, and this has actually come up recently with some of the clients that I've been speaking to, is if there is a disconnect between the kitchen and the delivery team, or the people who are putting the catering orders together. There are so many different names for these people. So I'm just going to try to piece you guys figure out who I'm talking about in your organizations. But If there is a disconnect there, and it always falls to communication, or somebody didn't report something, or something wasn't on the pack slip correctly, you're going to have a gap in the operation of how that's going to be executed. And I think that it's really, really important to try and find those little deficiencies or those missing spaces and fix them. And oftentimes somebody will ask me, well, how would you go ahead and fix this weak spot that you're seeing in your operation? And one of the first things that I think of is to shop your own catering company, right? So have your family or even you have a best friend, anybody, place a catering order, set them up with the types of questions that you want to ask, and then see how the person on the other line deals with all of the things that you've set up. Receive the orders, have the delivery set up, do whatever you do in your normal operation, but test it. And I say test it monthly would probably be an appropriate way for you to do it, but because you're always going to be able to spot check your team and make sure that everything's kind of as tight as possible, and make sure that those little check marks are was the order on time? Did I have everything in my order? Were there any missing items? Those are the top 3 things. So that's the number one weak spot that I'm going to say on the operational gaps that you should be kind of focused and looking on. Okay. Okay. So weak spot number 2 for us. Okay. Sales. I had mentioned this. Okay. So if my background began in sales, so this one really is an important piece for me, and one that I find that I have a strong capability of coaching, okay, people on. If you are not growing your sales, they're actually shrinking. And somebody once said this to me, and I was like, wow, how are they shrinking? But it started to occur to me how they would be shrinking. So they would shrink if you don't have anybody being proactive with outbound sales efforts. Okay. Now, that could be cold calling. That could be reaching out to your personal network of people. There are many different ways to generate new business of sales. However, a huge, easy way besides that, if you don't feel like that's the right direction for you, is to go to the people who are currently ordering, your current customers, and follow up with them. I am a psycho when it comes to making sure that you follow up with your catering clients, however often they order. So you have catering orders every day. The number one thing is, have you called them back? Have you solicited more business from them? And have you asked them what they have coming up next week? Or what does your holiday look like? It's summer. Do you have any company summer outings that you're hosting or anything like that? You have to pull this business, but you do so from literally reaching out to your existing client base. It's an easy way to get more business from the people who are currently ordering your food and who love it. Okay. Another weak spot in sales is staff that might be, or team members that might be unaware of your catering program or anything within your catering program, right? So I think a true master in the business of catering should be able to teach and show and have everybody on their team fully understand the entire catering operation. You have reached true success when you literally can ask anybody in your organization about your catering program and they'll actually understand what you're talking about, or that you have packages and stuff like that. Now, oftentimes CEOs won't necessarily know that you've got a lunch package and what is in it. I mean, I might challenge them a little bit and say, teach your CEO that, but my point is that there is staff that's unaware of your catering operation, and that is a weak spot that you can have them learn so that they can help sell for you if they are out in public or at a event themselves, and they can talk a little bit to somebody who's wondering about catering, or if they overhear it, right? So it's making sure that everybody understands what's happening within the organization of catering. And that goes to the event staff as well, that they understand how it works. Okay. I have been asked, and I will say this, people will say, well, who's responsible for keeping the sales pipeline or information flowing? And I would say whoever is responsible for your catering program, whether that's a director of catering, if that's a catering manager. I mean, all different companies have all different size operations. So I'll make it easy and say whoever is responsible for catering at your company or at your store, if you're a store level operator, that is that person who's responsible for pushing these types of little educational tools and helping create, fill in the weak spots with teaching and coaching and all of this of what I was just saying. Now, I'm going to jump to technology. Okay. If your company, and I'm hopeful, and I don't want to assume, but I'm hopeful that everybody who is running a catering operation has some type of positive catering technology that can help them not manually take catering orders. If you are not up in technology enough and you're manually taking catering orders, you are going to have a significant amount of mistakes. So that is a big weak spot, and a spot that we really want to avoid. But manual catering orders, you got to get rid of them in 2025. So I'm hopeful that people have some type of a system that they are using for their catering operation. If you don't have online ordering, that is a weak spot in your organization of catering. And that is something that there are companies that you can outsource that to. And I am not going to name any specific third party that could do that, but I'm just letting you know there are organizations that you can try and work with that can carry your menu and be your online ordering platform should you need it. Okay. So that's weak spot 2 in technology. This is different at many different companies. So oftentimes people will have a catering representative answering their phones or taking catering orders, or you have a huge call center. This varies per brand and per person. So I am going to speak a little bit generally here, and if there are questions on this, then we can go there in a minute. I don't know if I have a question there, but there was something weird. Okay. Anyway, but if you have a catering representative that is the one who would take catering orders and put them into a catering software system, you want to make sure that that person is an expert in all things catering for your program, because that trickles back to sales and execution of making sure nothing's forgotten in catering orders. So you can kind of see where I'm going backwards here in some of the things that I was saying. But if you don't have a catering representative that's at your company and it's just done through online ordering, somebody's got to be checking those catering orders and confirming them in your systems anyway. So it would be just making sure that that person understands the technology that they're working with, and that if paper goods aren't checked in a specific order, that they know to check for that kind of stuff, and that the technology will allow for that to happen, if that is helpful. Okay. I'm going to jump now to another weak area that we can find some good positive growth opportunities is training and accountability. last month I talked about communication, and last month was a little bit differently. It was about managers and people leaving and everything like that, right? But it all comes down to communication in business, right? And are we communicating? It can be any industry whatsoever, but if you don't have the right communication, you're going to have issues in your in everything. So training and accountability. Have you done an audit of what your team is doing and how the employees are trained, and do they understand the entire operation? Okay, so it's a perfect, sometimes people might want to start with training and accountability and making sure that their team understands all of these important pieces before they really kind of get going in the entire program, which obviously is important. But we're looking at the weak spots here. So our frontline employees are the first people who are touching catering or doing anything with your catering program. Are they trained, and do they understand all of the catering basics? That is a giant question that you should be asking yourself. Okay. Do you perform the proper training moments or coaching moments for your team when they are learning everything that there is to know about the catering program, right? So if you, for example, as the leader of a catering operation, if you're walking into a kitchen and you see somebody making a salad, okay, and that salad isn't exactly as it was originally supposed to be made, are you stopping and in that operation and changing the way that they're making it, or are you taking note, or are you addressing it live with that team member saying, listen, salad's a little wrong, we're not going to correct this right at this moment because you've got to make 500 of them. However, you're going to make a note, we're going to meet later and teach you how to make sure that we're just doing it properly to spec, or that we have the exact amount of tomatoes on that salad that need to be. So are you doing that? If not, great opportunity to, but you're also going to hold that person accountable for making sure that they're going to learn it and execute it appropriately. So do you have that person in your operation going back and training and teaching and saying, this isn't as it's supposed to be, this isn't how we planned it, it's supposed to be like XYZ, and you're making sure that somebody is doing XYZ so that it's done properly, if that makes sense. Okay. I'm going to jump to weak spot number 5. That's training accountability. And if people have questions too on any of these things, then I'm happy to go back and try to answer them, but I'm trying to kind of move through here. So I will answer that question in a minute, because I just have a few more. I have 3 more weak spots that I'm going to go through, and then I'm going to answer that question. So bear with me. Weak spots. Okay, so we talked about training and accountability. The next one, packaging and delivery failures. Okay, so any packaging and delivery. Okay, so it's extremely important that if you're just starting a catering operation, and I'm not answering that question yet, so pop it up in a second, but if you're running a catering operation and you've never run it before, or you're new and you decide to go into cheap, not good packaging, and it doesn't travel well, you are going to have a problem on your hands. So as difficult as it sounds, your catering operation is actually super important, because the way that it shows up to the client and the way that it's presented from your team is extremely important. So I just say that because I just want to make sure that everybody understands the packaging piece here. But that's I feel like that's obvious, but it might not be. So I don't want to assume anything. Okay. Weak spot. If you have incomplete labeling or people are sloppy with the way that they build out your food, that's a great weak spot to work on. Labeling, gosh, in this world, we've got so many cool companies out there that have really neat label machines. If you're old school and you don't have that money to invest in something like that, then a 3mm printer label that's typed up and neat stuck on a package, that will do if that's the way you are doing it. But it must be clearly labeled, and it must have vegetarian, it must be diet labeled if it's vegetarian, vegan, gluten-free, all of these allergies that are out in the world today. It's extremely important that you are doing those things properly. So a really important focus should be on making sure things are properly labeled. Okay. And the last thing on the packaging and delivery is, do you have the right people delivering your food? I know this is a tough world for us to get delivery people, but I think that hiring delivery drivers for your brand that represent your company is one of the most important things that you can do. Even if you have a team member within your four walls that are going to be also doing deliveries, the better your delivery person, the better the final experience is for the customer. And I think that it's extremely important. That is the last person that they're really seeing from your brand. And I know I've had really awesome delivery drivers and I've had not so awesome delivery drivers, and it really can make or break the relationship with the client. If they trust your delivery driver, if your delivery driver is receptive to the instruction or direction that the client or customer is giving you, that's extremely valuable for your company. So just make sure that you're training and teaching that person how to accurately do the deliveries and set them up. In the past, I would hold training seminars for people who would do catering setups so that we would teach all the delivery drivers exactly how a catering order should be set up. And if it's this package, it's this way. If it's this one, it's this way. And it's just really valuable for your driver to understand what the expectation is from the company, but also help the customer feel very comfortable with the company that is setting up the food. And the last one that I had mentioned of a weak spot for some brands, if they are not large enough to have this department, is menu. And do you have the right things on your menu? What's selling, what's not? If it's not selling, get rid of it. Be honest with yourself. Really analyze the data on how many times this package is ordered, and be sure to pay attention to food trends. What's trendy, what out there? Ask competition, pay attention to what people are ordering from your competitors, because I think that there's an extremely valuable piece for you to shake up your menu. It doesn't have to be every month. It can be twice a year. It could be 3 times a year. It can be seasonal. Should be seasonal if we're talking about freshness. But I understand that there are some brands out there that can't do that and don't have that person. So even if you're like, okay, I'm going to pick 6 different items to play with this year and start there, it's something, and it's better than nothing. And customers can get kind of bored with your menus if they're ordering all the time. So making sure that you're kind of following in the season and in the food trends of what's trendy is valuable. And if you're not doing it, it's a good little weak spot for you to focus on and enhance your seasonal options. And I know obviously with high food costs, higher margined items, lower margined items, shaking it in those directions as well is something to pay attention to. But, less can be sometimes more. We've all heard that before. And I just think that there's value on how you can kind of scale a seasonal menu if you aren't used to doing that. So something there. Okay. Final thought here for me before I maybe go into some questions are what are some tools that you could use for auditing your weak spots in your organization? Okay, so some quick ones that I had put together were, are you having a weekly catering meeting? If there's a lot of weakness in your organization, and people might ask these questions, so before I dive too deep into answering that question, if you are holding catering meetings and communication with your team on a weekly basis, if you're not, start weekly. Start it weekly. Discuss any issues that occurred. If you're experiencing multiple issues a day or a week, then you need to do a deep dive as to what those issues were. And it might take us back up to the number one thing that I first started talking about, and that was the operational gaps. I think that it's extremely important for you to be honest with yourself on what you're seeing in your weekly catering meetings or updates. And it doesn't have to be an hour-long discussion. It could be a 15-minute powwow if that's what you need to have with your team. But understanding any negative issues that happen for the week, any discrepancies with orders, forgotten items in orders. If you have your catering person calling to follow up, or salesperson following up every day with every catering client that places a catering order, whether that's via email, text, phone call, however they are communicating, and they are sharing that there was an issue, then you should actually be knowing it that day so that you guys are all over it for the next time that person orders, and it's logged into the technology of like, we forgot Erin's sandwich platter last week, and the next one she's supposed to get, for free. Then that should be handled on a daily basis. But I would definitely be having the weekly meetings and checking your scorecards for how you did each week as a starter. This is an area where we can immediately begin a positive change in our operation. I think that surveying your catering clients is also a really helpful tool that people sometimes will do. And it's not a deep survey. It could be 4 questions, 5, 2. I don't care how many questions it is. But if you're surveying your clients and you're understanding the feedback, even if you do a quick survey monkey, it helps with the analytics and information, and has you understand how you're doing from the horse's mouth itself, right? From your actual client that's giving you feedback. And then you need to take that feedback, report it back to your team and your ops team to make sure that everybody's aligned, in your sales team. And again, you're going to find your little weak areas there that you can work on and really enhance your operation. And I don't know, I think it's positive. So I will jump to some questions right now if people have any, and I will wrap it up after the questions with some action items and final checklists, just so that if anybody is taking notes on it, that I can help support the final overall takeaway points. So if there are any questions, I can throw those answers out as best as I can. Okay, so how do you get your team involved in identifying what's not working? So first of all, you need to ask yourself, is everybody on the team involved in the catering operation, and do they add the correct value that you need in with your organization of catering? Everybody, I bet you if you ask what issues or weak spots that you can find in the operations and execution of your catering, or the sales area, or technology, we'll start with those 3. I bet you if you asked anybody, they'll come up with some type of a response to any one of those. So I would say ask your team if they see any weak areas in our operations, our execution, our sales growth, and or our technology to start. And hopefully they'll answer you. Okay, so this is a really great question. The question is it better to patch weaknesses as they come up or overhaul entire systems at once? So as I was speaking, the example of you're walking through the kitchen and you see somebody making a salad and it's not right, but you can't disrupt an entire operational moment for you fixing how the salad looks. So my suggestion is, if you're going to be witnessing something live at that moment and you can't stop the operation to correct it, that's the patch of a weakness that I would say isn't necessarily always helpful, but it's a live example. So for that, it could be good for you to correct it, but I think overhauling entire systems at once is a larger change in an operation. So I would say patching or filling in, because patches can fall off, holes can be filled and hopefully not return for a long time. So I would say going to see the weak areas that you have in your operation. Again, it's not a negative, but if your team isn't doing something and something isn't how it's supposed to be executed, I think it's an extreme valuable moment to fix those operational deficiencies or any other deficiency that might pop up as they do, because you might have an unbelievable catering operation and not realize that there's a lack of communication happening between the person taking the catering order and the kitchen that's executing it. So you might have to do a little bit of small work there, but you might not need a complete overhaul in a system, if that makes sense. So it depends on kind of the live moment of what you're dealing with, but I hope that answers that. So it says, how do you collect and prioritize customer feedback to find weak points? SurveyMonkey. So, okay, I'm going to back up 1 second. If you have a catering person that reaches out to your catering clients, this person has so many different titles at so many different organizations. So if you have a catering liaison or a catering service representative who talks to your catering clients and places their catering orders through the system, they should be the first point guard for understanding any issues with your clients. Now, technology has allowed for there to be different platforms of whether or not you have a positive catering experience or a negative one, right? So sometimes, and back in my day, it was like you had a happy face or a red face, or you had, and that was called like a green or a red. There are scoring numbers like 1 through 5, 1 being bad, 5 being awesome. So there are different ways that you can find this data out. So that's the collection piece for you. Or you could do a SurveyMonkey, but customer feedback, if they're like, this was forgotten, I forgot sandwiches, or my paper goods were forgotten, or the driver was not helpful and she just left everything up on a counter and stuff like that. I think that if it's anything negative, it should be a top priority for your organization to find the weak space in the link and fix it. Okay, so do you regularly mystery shop or simulate orders to test your system? Why or why not? I think that you should. Regularly, no, not often, right? Because we're all so busy in our operations trying to execute to be like, oh, I forgot to place my own catering order today. But I do think that it is an important thing for you to somehow weave into the fabric of your business. I think that it will allow for you to see gaps faster in any parts of your business. So as a leader of your organization or your catering operation, I would expect that you hold a high standards to what is expected. And I would test that theory on your team. And it's not to be sneaky. I mean, remember that show, The Undercover Boss, that was very popular for a long time? It was to make sure that we were doing, or our teams were doing what we as leaders are trying to make sure that our brand represents. And I think that you can really see some of the weak categories or weak spots that pop up in our organizations. And I don't look at it as a negative. I look at it as a tremendous growth opportunity and learning for your brand. This is a technology question. How can tech either help solve weak spots or accidentally create new ones? Okay, well, technology can actually create weak spots, and that can be created because the system on the backside, somebody didn't properly enter something. So a human error maybe in the coding or the back writing of our software programs. But sometimes we as humans can make mistakes entering the information in. So the client doesn't get a salad that they were supposed to, or we didn't add the sides on because it wasn't part of the program. So technology can cause weak spots due to that. So if you are going into a new software program, which I know people change their software, not all the time, but often enough. And if there was a technology that wasn't working before and your new one is going to give you better access to a more efficient operation, then I think it's extremely important that you make sure that stuff is written positively, 100% on the backside. But that's the backside or the accident of technology. How technology can help solve weak spots is when I first was talking about the operational execution or handwriting, manual order taking. That's the word I'm looking for, manual order taking. There is a tremendous space for mistakes if you are manually entering anything, and that is just because we're humans. So having it automated and allowing for the tech to really be present for you with ordering, it will alleviate those areas, I think, quite quickly. What are signs that your catering team is stretched too thin or not properly supported? Okay, well, most likely all of our catering teams are stretched so thin. And sometimes within that organization, people might not feel supported. So this is where the leader of your catering operation, it would be amazing for me to say the chief catering officer of your organization one day, is making sure that they're in touch with their team and really communicating with them and checking in on them and making sure that they feel supported. If they don't feel supported, you need to look in the mirror and ask yourself, am I properly supporting my team in the way that they need it? And that comes back to communication. I am sure during, giant events, everybody feels extremely stretched, and that needs to be discussed Obviously, after an event, and people need to come forward and feel comfortable talking about the stresses that occurred in place for the execution. But I do think that it's extremely valuable for after your events for you to regroup with your team and say, okay, kitchen, I'm assuming it's kitchen operations or something. The team's building everything out. How did you feel about this, 6,000 person event? Where did we struggle? Where were we not organized enough? If people are stressed in a kitchen, it because everybody's yelling and mad and frustrated and stuff like that. So we need to kind of make sure that the planning of the entire event is going in the positive direction that we want it to. Where we're supporting everyone on the backside, where that the kitchen feels like they've been communicated to properly and ops is able to execute it, delivery knows what they need to do, event staff knows what they need to do, and so on and so on. Hopefully that answers that. Catering, the question is, where do catering programs typically lose money? Catering programs lose money when we are not executing our catering orders accurately, when we aren't training our catering teams appropriately, where we aren't putting catering as an important part, a 13th month of our business. If you do not invest in a catering operation for your business and you aren't all in, then your catering program will typically lose money. You've got to invest in the people, you've got to invest in the technology and the packaging and all of it. But if you're going to operate and invest in it, you must do it, or you will lose money. I will say one other thing before I answer this next question. If the top leadership doesn't buy into catering, it will never be as successful. It is when top leadership buys into catering that you will find it to be successful. But you have to, there's a lot of work that has to go into it. Okay, next question. What tools or methods have helped you uncover issues you didn't know were there? Okay, well, this session, I hope will help you identify issues that you didn't realize were there. By going back and asking yourself the tough questions, or your team the tough questions of where are our weak spots. And again, I started it with saying it is not to be negative. It is a growth opportunity. It is a great coaching opportunity for you and or the leader of your organization of catering to really kind of say, am I asking the right questions to my team? We all think that we are. And I think that it's all with, the biggest heart that we're trying to work hard and put our best foot forward. But there are weak spots in all of our catering operations. And if you can go and identify even the top, even go into the top three that I said, the operational pieces, the sales pieces, the tech pieces, and start with those three and see how you're doing. It's a great opportunity for you. And I hope that this session has given you a little bit of an opportunity to find those methods to help you. Okay, next question is, how do you balance fixing weaknesses with the daily pressure of just get the job done? Okay, well, fixing the weaknesses helps you with the entire overall business. Okay, so we're not here to just get the job done. And I think if that's the mentality that anybody at your organization has, I understand somebody might be saying, I'm just trying to execute the event successfully, accurately, make sure that the customer's happy. So if that's the direction that question is being asked, versus filling in the little weak spots of your organization, it's kind of two different questions, but I'm thinking for 1 second. So just give me a second as I really try to answer that appropriately. The daily pressure that people feel to get a job done will fall back to that they weren't trained appropriately. And I think that to have a truly successful catering operation, you need to balance in making sure that everybody is on the same page as you with what the daily expectations are, what the overall company expectations are, what the client expectations are. And I think that if you can figure out how to blend those three things together, the daily pressure of just getting the job done won't feel like such pressure and that you're just trying to check a box. I hope that kind of answers that question. Okay. Now, just a couple of minutes left. So I am going to kind of close out just to recap and make sure that everybody feels like this was a very valuable piece. But as I wrap up, I want you to take away the following, if anything, right? I want you to identify the weak spots, the weakest areas in your catering operation, okay? And be really honest with yourself on those, okay? Once you've identified some of the weakest areas, and it doesn't have to be like this long laundry list. That's something important for me to also mention. It doesn't have to be this huge list, but identify these weak areas. Then I want you to assign ownership, okay? And assigning ownership, that means who at your organization is going to be the one that can help you fill in the hole that's there or the divot that's there. Okay. It's extremely important that somebody owns it, because if they own it, they'll feel very proud when that issue is fixed and everything's now working in the right direction. Okay. And then I want you to set a timetable for that. So if you see a weakness, I want you to identify, okay, I can fix this by X. Setting dates for yourself will allow for you to hold yourself or your team accountable. And this goes back to accountability and making sure that we're actually doing what we say we're going to do. We're fixing the issue that is at hand. These are positive things that will have a positive impact on not only the person that's a part of making sure that this problem goes away, but also the entire catering operation in general, which trickles down to your customers, right? So we want to make sure that those gaps are filled in so that the customer isn't experiencing late orders, missed items, errors on catering technology because we didn't write it in, we didn't enter it into the system properly. Okay. And then I would like for you to revisit your weak spots for every month. Okay. And I want you to kind of audit it every month to check. Okay, it's been 30 days since we first started implementing this. Here's where we are. We're either on par, behind, kicking butt, you name it. Okay. But revisit it monthly. And don't just revisit it once a month for a month and then be like, oh, yay, we're doing it. It's done. Check yourself. Check it the next month. Check it the month after that. Okay, I can take 2 months off. I'm going to check it every 6 months. But check it. Follow up, follow through. Make sure that your team understands that this is the new expectation or this expectation changed. Communicate appropriately to them. And really importantly, make sure that everybody sees that it's changed, and make sure that it's visible, because that's extremely, extremely important. And my final thought is, make sure that you handle your changes with grace and find your weak spaces with grace, because we're all doing the best we can. And make sure that your team understands that you recognize that we are doing the best that we could at that moment, but this is a weak spot and it needs to change. And here's what we're going to do to start making those appropriate changes. And make sure your team's a part of those changes that are happening, and that you're communicating them appropriately. Because I think that at the end of the day, finding these little weak spots in our programs is not bad. It's going to allow for somebody to have a growth opportunity by learning either a new skill or something that they didn't know before. Because I know that I've been taught things in my time that I wasn't necessarily doing the correct way, but I learned how to do it. And I felt so proud that I was able to take on such a new learning experience, and then I could go teach somebody else that. And at the end of the day, with all of our coworkers and everything, we're trying to learn from one another and make sure that our customers have a really positive experience when they are working with our brands. And that is the end goal, is making sure that we're making customers happy. And if we're making customers happy, then we're doing our jobs. And that is the point. So I'm going to end it there. I'm going to thank everybody that tuned in and listened today. And I hope that everybody is enjoying the summer so far, and that you're pushing yourselves for some good fall innovation on your catering. And hopefully you're already soliciting your holiday menus, because it's only 6 months away, friends. Thank you so much for tuning in. Take care.